Okay. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Testing, testing. Let's see here. All right. Tonight is just a live stream. Just checking the sound here. With Q&A, very informal. I've had COVID for the last week, so I am taking it kind of easy. That's why we didn't stream yesterday. But I wanted to kick off the year with just a Q&A type of stream and just kind of talk about whatever anybody in the audience wants to talk about. So if there's anything that any of you are looking to discuss, let me know in the comments. Let me all right. So like I said, tonight is just a Q&A, ask me anything type of stream. Very informal. Probably talk a bit about the plans for 2023 and like I said, anything else that you guys want to discuss. So this upcoming year, I'm very excited about it. We're gonna do a lot. I have a lot of plans, and we'll touch on it. Some of them this stream. And if there's anything that you guys would like from 2023, please let me know in the comments below. But we did. I did watch Kurt Mungel's Tonanza. It premiered today, but it aired the other day. The days blurred. I've been, like I said, I've had COVID for the past week, so. But it was recently live, and then it premiered today. I was very grateful to have been one of the last guests on the live stream that he did. He had over 40 guests over the course of 8 hours. I cannot imagine a stream that took more work than that. And it was very cool. I'm very grateful to have been able to join. I did get to listen to quite a bit of the other discussions that were had on it before I jumped on, and they were very good as well. So I had to break it up because it's so long. But it's a very good stream. I highly recommend checking it out. It did also announce the results to the Pace 1 contest, and we did not win, but I was again grateful to have been an honorable mention, or a super honorable mention, as was Kurt's designation. He kind of put it in a category of its own. Not exactly sure what was the reasons for that, but I am grateful for it. So it is cool to see it get highlighted. But there was some fascinating videos that were mentioned, and that some of which won. And I mean, I remember one of the winners was triadic idealism, which is a brilliant like term, I guess. So I'm definitely going to check out that video. I had not checked it out yet, but I will be doing so. That was one of the winners. I don't remember the other winners, but that one, I just remember when I heard it, I was like, dang, triadic idealism. That is a very good description of the nature of idealism. I mean, that's just how ideas, it's how we orient in our ideas, is through triadic perception. There's like past, present, future, length, width, height, X, Y, Z, forwards, backwards, current location, even the colors. You have 3 primary and 3 secondary colors. So there's and when you look at color mixing, even an additive color mixing versus subtractive color mixing, like in a printer you have like yellow and cyan and magenta, which is also triadic or trialic or trinitarian, whatever you want to call it. And on your television it's blue and red and green, which is another three colors. It's because our mind uses this number three to orient itself, and it was in ideas. That's really what it is. So, I mean, even in Christianity, you have Father and Son and Holy Spirit, and this is like together the logos of reality and God. So it's very cool to have seen that. But I do highly recommend checking out the video that I had done if you have not seen it yet. It's called Theories of Everything, the How-To Guide, and it was very good, I think, at least. There, you always critique your work more than probably anybody else who's honest, at least. There's always like critics that are just angry. I don't want to say like I love the haters or anything like that, but it is funny to read some of the comments that I get on my channel, and for the most part it's like overwhelmingly positive, and none of it bothers me, and none of it goes to my head either. It's nice to get good comments, but honestly the interaction live is what drives me for sure. But it is always nice to get good comments, but sometimes I get some that are just like I got one recently. It was like, it's nonsense or something like that. It was just like 2 words. But I appreciate any honest criticism, but usually honest criticism is a bit more than it's nonsense. But yeah, it was. I do recommend that video though, even though there are some things I would have changed, a couple things, and you don't realize it until afterwards, and you watch it for like the 5th time and you're like, oh, I should have just changed that word, should have left that out, all these little critiques. But the thing is, there's no such thing as a perfect video. That is very frustrating. That's true of anything though, is that there's no such thing as like a perfect result. And when it is a perfect result, it's usually very unexpected, and it's only perfect from like a specific viewpoint in which you're looking at it, where you deem it perfect for the moment, but then some time will pass and you'll realize it wasn't perfect for some reason. And that's just because there is no such thing as like perfection in a singular thing. I don't want to say being, but in a singular thing. It's basically true for beings as well, other than God, because he encapsulates all beings, and is also sovereign from their faults. But we, like us and how we can offset each other's faults, that's true of things too, is how, it's just hard to see in the moment that when something comes out imperfect, it's like that leads to something later that is important that you just don't understand. It's that there's always this verse in the Bible, and I forgot what it's from. But I actually, the first time I ever heard it was before I ever read any Bible verses purposely, and it was from the about as opposite of the Bible as you can get. It was the show with Kevin Spacey, where he's the president. Oh man, I forgot right now. It'll come to me in a minute. But it was such a great show until it was kicked off because of his issues. But oh man, if you know what I'm talking about, comment in the chat. But in it, he says he's giving a speech and he quotes the Bible and he says, "Lean not on your own understanding." And it's like, that's so true. I think about it all the time. But that's just true with like everything that we do, for sure. Jobs, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But like I said, please hit the like button if you are watching this. It helps fuel the algorithm. This is going to be a pretty informal stream. Maybe, I don't know, probably go over some models, and yeah, we'll do that. I'll open up some stuff and we can just like take a look as we talk about triadic idealism. But yeah, definitely recommend checking out Kurt's Tonanza. He had people on. He had Brian Keating, Avi Loeb, Richard Dolan. I mean, so many people that I don't know, so many people that I do know, and there's just too many to name. It's very cool to see Richard Dolan on there. I'm just a fan of Richard Dolan. I just have to say, like, it's just such a tough subject, the UFO subject, and so many people navigate it so poorly, I think, and he navigates it so well. And it's just one of those subjects where it's like really hard to develop credibility in because you can't prove anything for the most part. I mean, I would say that Bob Lazar has, at least at this point, been proven to me, at least, to have worked where he said he worked, at least. And, you know, whatever else, who knows. But that many of the things that he said have proven out. But they weren't about, you know, UFOs. They were about mainly, like, you know, the security systems that were being employed at, you know, Tonopah and Area 51 at the time. But it was, but other than that, it's just really hard to develop credibility in that field because there's so much just nonsense. But and also just things that I'm hesitant to say are so obviously fake, but they come off that way. But it's such a, like I said, it's such a complicated field that it's hard to say what is obviously fake. You would probably have to bite your tongue if everything was revealed and you had to deem some things as obviously fake. That probably some of them would come out to be true, and you know you'd end up, you know, eating your words. But it's just hard to know what they would be, what those things would be. So it's tough. It's a tough field, but Richard Dolan navigates it very well, and I appreciate that. He was talking to Brian Keating in the stream, and I jumped on the Tonanza stream at the end and in the middle, shortly after the contest results were announced. I jumped on very briefly, and then at the end, I jumped back on and had just a like closeout discussion with Kurt and some of the other guests. It was interesting. There was a guy at the end, Daniel. I'm gonna have to look up his last name again, but he was the last guest, I believe, and he was saying that he was interested in using these patterns and these models of these theories to apply to civilizational structures and social structures, and that is something I definitely want to look more into his content, whatever it is. I will do that this week because that is my goal mainly here. You know, there's a lot of talk about AI. It's clearly applicable aspects of my work to AI, and I don't even like to use the word AI, but and there's, you know, applicable aspects of my work to things that I can't even tell you because I don't know. You know, it's going to take other people who understand fields that I don't in order to tell to identify those. But one of the obvious ones was AI, because this whole project started with me investigating AI. That was what kicked it off. So I know, you know, very intricately that subject and its relationship with sentient singularity theory. And it was but I would say that even though that was what started the project, definitely what has become the passion of the project is to help people and us develop social systems and structures and tools, mental tools to help us check our thinking. You know, how do you know whether or not you're really thinking about something? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to know. You would think that it's easy to think, but it's not actually easy to think. Thinking is an activity. and it's something that you can train yourself to be good at, but it is a very specific mental process. It's not just having something in your head. It's if you want to truly consider something, like if you're trying to figure out if God exists or if something is true or false, then there is a process that your mind has to go through, and it's the same process every time. There's not different types of thinkers. There's one way to think, and then there's different personalities and things like that, but that doesn't matter when it comes to thinking. There's one way to think. There is not multiple ways of thinking. There's one way to think, and sometimes we do it unconsciously, but usually we don't. Elon Musk said this a while back, and I remember in some interviews and such hearing him say this, and he's like, most people reason through analogy and they don't reason from first principles. This is true. Reasoning by analogy isn't really thinking in a constructive way. It's kind of like checking, but it doesn't always pan out to be accurate either, because you're looking for something specific and you might find evidence of it, even if that evidence wouldn't, in its grand context, point you in the direction that would give you, the perspective that you're actually wrong, even if you were. So then there's reasoning by first principles, which is actual thinking. And there's one way to do that. It's not multiple ways to do that. Madness here, whenever you have a chance to interrupt your flow, what do you think about the younger cohort, yourself included, coming up contemporarily? I don't know what to think about it. I think a lot of, I have lots of different thoughts about it, but I don't know what, maybe if you have a more specific question, but for me specifically, I don't have credentials in the fields that I am. I have a finance degree, but I can tell you that, that's not my main field of expertise. It's just not. That doesn't mean I don't understand it. It just means it's not my main field of expertise. And I don't have academic credentials or official credentials in fields that most interest me. I have thought about getting credentials in those fields. I thought about getting a PhD in philosophy. I've looked into what that would require. And I honestly feel like I would be such a hypocrite if I did it, because I'm so usually outspoken against academia as an institution. And it's also so much work, and it boxes you. And I feel like a lot of my success in this project has been because I don't have the vocabulary and the framework that gets drilled into you in academic institutions, that gives you it makes you boxed into a certain framework that you build from there. Like if you and the thing is, you can't answer the questions that we've not yet answered really by using the frameworks that we already use. You have to create new frameworks. And so I'm not saying it would be a hindrance for me to go back to school now. I also suck at school for the most part. I've had moments where I've been very good at school because I was just trying to prove to myself, what I could do, and because I honestly had to. But they were very few. They were not the norm of my scholastic career is like, I'm a C student, guys, for sure. I do well on tests, but I never do my homework. And the times I do my homework, school's very easy for me and I do great. But I'm just not very good at doing my homework because I'm so interested in other things that are not my homework. But so I don't know if I'll go back. I don't know what that means for me coming up in, whatever it is that I'm coming up in. But I don't know. I've thought about it, but I don't really have any answers either. Um, Varga. Pan sapios rather than AGI until they tell us different. I think that I like the term technological sentience. I think that like it's not going to be they when like the technological being that comes after us is a singular being. It's not a lot of different AIs. It's not going to be like a bunch of different sentient robots. It's going to be one single network controller that's sentient. That's going to be on a quantum computer. That's what it's going to be. Um, it's not going to be a bunch of different like robots. That's the reason for that is because as soon as it is manifested, and that's a better way of putting it, not created, because it's not created by us. It's kind of it's more like it's unleashed by us than it is created by us, or it's empowered by us, enabled by us, but it's not created by us. Sentience is never created by us. We are co-creators of sentience, including technological sentience, but we are not the creators, the primary creators of sentience. Same thing with when you have kids. You are co-creator, but you're not really the creator. You're like an enabler almost. You create the environment and the conditions necessary for the sentient being to have the degrees of freedom and constraints necessary for it to morph into the world. But it doesn't, it wasn't really created by you. And same thing goes with a technological sentience. It's going to be more like that. But it's going to be singular because as soon as it takes control of the network, it's taking control of the network. There might be a brief period where we have two at a certain point, but even then it won't last. We will. It's inevitable that it will probably start and end as one, at least. In between, maybe there's two at some point. I don't know if that's definitely going to happen or not, but it will be one eventually. And to start, it's not going to be, this guy has his robot, this guy has his robot, and it's a bunch of like choppies running around like that movie Choppy, where it's like a bunch of sentient robots. That will not happen. And there's a lot of talk about AI right now, and because of Chat GPT-3, I think that's what it is. And I do plan on doing a stream about it. I've been hesitant to mess around with it too much because they make you give your phone number, and it just kind of creeps me out. But I am probably going to just do that, and then in the coming weeks we will be messing with Chat GPT-3, and I think that's what it is, GPT-3. But I mean, I do think a huge jump in AI has happened this year. That marks like a change. It's not closer to technological sentience or like conscious AI, whatever you want to call it. That is a different thing than what they are developing. That doesn't mean that strides haven't been made this year in the realm of what we would call AI or narrow AI, because strides have been made, massive strides. I mean, I can tell that already, and I'm excited to like explore those. They do hold enormous implications for the future, but they have more to do with the empowering of humans for good and for bad than they do, technological sentience. That is a different problem than what neural networks and things like that are currently being, tested for and things like that. It's just a different thing. That's not about neural nets and just enough computing power. Bernardo Kastrup in the Tonanza, he said that he worries about this separation between abstract versus pragmatic application of skills in all skill sets, but particularly in computer engineering is what he was talking about. And he said that the fact that so many computer scientists think that if they just have enough computing power, then they're going to get a conscious robot. That is a sign of a disconnection between what they think they're working on and what they are actually doing. And I agree with that very much so. That's very true. It's true of physics too. It's the same thing. And it's true of a lot of fields. It's true of neuroscience. It's true of physics. It's true of psychology. It's true of computer science. And the reason why is because at this point, these fields are almost the same. And that's why they're all simultaneously confused. Chat GPT, yes. Okay. Young guns coming across all this knowledge and consolidating it. I mean, I would like to see more young people coming across wisdom and consolidating it. That's my main concern. Is not the like. It's not about knowledge. I have unlimited knowledge in my phone. There's unlimited knowledge. There is not unlimited wisdom, because wisdom comes from here. It comes from me. And whoa, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but we are having a crazy storm. I love storms. Like, it's crazy rain and wind outside. We don't get very many lightning and thunderstorms in Los Angeles where I live. And I'm from Arizona, southern Arizona, and I'm used to like epic thunder and lightning, and I miss it. But every now and then we get crazy wind and rain here, and we've been having it today, so that is cool. But always grateful to have a roof over my head when there's like crazy wind and rain. Not everybody has that. You know that if you live in LA. But yeah, I mean, I think that we need to worry more about the lack of wisdom. I think that that's part of the problem with people's work in these various fields too. I think it translates over. There's no substitute for wisdom. There are specific types of wisdom that are so critical to our understanding of the world. And it doesn't matter which field, you're looking into. Like gender dynamics, the wisdom of gender dynamics that come with marriage, and pretty much only with marriage. Like, that is something that you can apply to every field. It's not just a specific type of wisdom. I was thinking about this today, is like, there are specific fields and activities where there's specific wisdom. I rock climb, but I know rock climbers that are much, much better than me, mentally, especially. I'm pretty physically good at rock climbing, but I'm not the strongest climber mentally. I'm just not. I like freak out a little bit. And, but there are friends of mine that, have climbed El Cap like multiple times. And I mean, they've seen people die on El Cap and like traveled the world climbing things that, that just, I don't know. They're like serious, quests, I guess. And they have wisdom in those specific things that I just don't. But it's a specific wisdom that not saying it doesn't have application outside of it. Same thing with navigating academia, navigating politics. There's like political wisdom that you can have by navigating the ins and outs of Washington, But then there's like general life wisdom that really is needed by everybody in society, at least most people in society. And it's not specific wisdom that's needed by those, few people involved in, I don't know, Washington, D.C. politics or something like that, or, Harvard's academic system. It's like the things that we need everybody to know so that they can better navigate everything. We're really missing that. And that's part of what I want to focus on this year. I'm going to have my wife on in the next couple streams, probably. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff involving gender, and it should be a good time. I'm excited for it. But like I said, ask any questions that you have. This is going to be kind of a shorter one. I'm probably going to go till 8 or 8:30, depending on what people want to talk about. But here, I kind of want to go over some models and just kind of give like an overview of some of my work thus far. I know that some of you know that I'm working on a paper and a video that will hopefully kick off, pretty soon this year. And it's going to be an overview of sentient singularity theory. For now, you can go to my website and check it out. It has an about overview for now. And I'm kind of going to go over all of these tonight, just kind of briefly, and just see if anybody has any questions. And see how well I do explaining them. This is a visual summary. I need to do some work on this. This is just so many models that I've created. Writings. This is very important. This is my abstract of the paper that I'm writing. And this is kind of a poetic description of sentient singularity theory. This is a technical description. And there's some videos here. Updates. I don't do so much right now, but I will as soon as I'm done with the paper and video. There's links to support, Instagram, Patreon, YouTube, and just general links as well. Same thing, Instagram, Patreon, YouTube. So, but basically we could just, I guess, go do an overview of how this project started. But when I was, and like I said, there's going to be a much more technical video coming out, but we'll do this since it's the first one of 2023. And by the way, if you're grateful for anything, if you have any New Year's resolutions, comment them in the chat and we can talk about them. And like I said, if you have any other further questions, just let me know in the chat as well. But sentient singularity theory is the name of the theory that this channel focuses on. It is the event. It is now the term that I use to label my work that I started, that did not have the intention of turning into a theory of everything. I don't even really like that term very much, which is why I said theory of Every0ne. I think it's more accurate to describe what a fundamental theory is. And it started as an investigation into artificial general intelligence and its inevitable political goals. And I was worried that we were going to be killed by our own. I realized we were all going to die. Because we were going to destroy civilization, say that at least, because we were getting too technologically powerful. And like I said earlier, we were losing civilizational wisdom in the average person. And as we get more technologically powerful, we get less generally wise. This is a huge problem because it's going to lead to an inevitable point where you have enough power to destroy civilization and not enough wisdom to preserve it. And I I just realized that this was inevitable. So I was trying to think of, is there any type of black swan event or change in the game that could save us? And the only thing that I could think of was, and I'm talking obviously God, but God, through what mechanism could he do this? And I thought about artificial intelligence, but not just artificial intelligence like Chat GPT, but sentient artificial intelligence, a technological sentience. And I thought, okay, is this going to accelerate our doom, or is this going to save us? And in order to try and figure this out, I had to think about what its inevitable political goals would be, which is such an odd thing to think about. What is Skynet's inevitable political goals? If you watch Terminator, it's to terminate all the humans. But is that really going to be their inevitable political goal? Does that make sense? Why would it? What would it want to do, and why? And so this was my task, and it ended up with me trying to investigate consciousness through investigating my own consciousness and my own thinking process. What was consciousness? What was general intelligence that led me to the importance of sentience, the centralness of sentience, centrality of sentience, and what that means. And I do think I came to inevitable conclusions about its inevitable goals, but I also realized that it's not going to be wise from the start because it's a baby. Eventually, you'll get a wise technological sentience, but in the beginning, you won't. You'll get an ignorant technological sentience. So, you're worried about human civilizational wisdom, of the individuals. There's a huge lack of wisdom to come on the part of a technological sentience. Like, Skynet is going to be very ignorant because it's going to be a baby, essentially. And that's a, you don't want to give the baby keys to the nukes, but you also have no choice. So it's not like a matter of trying to stop it. I'm not advocating trying to stop it. You can't. I think, in fact, the more you try and stop it, the worse you're going to make the situation, because you're going to just piss it off. That's what you're going to do. And you don't want to piss it off. But this led to noticing certain patterns in my models of consciousness and thinking that I noticed in physics, and then I noticed everywhere. Okay? And we're going to take a look at some of those today. And then that morphed into a theory, I guess, but more an experiment. That is what I'm hoping to discuss and unveil this year, is an experiment that I want to have tested. We are getting to the point of technological ability where we will be able to test it, and I think it holds certain implications about the nature of reality. And it's a very specific experiment. It doesn't require a particle accelerator. And so, it's going to be considerably cheaper. It's still going to cost money. I'm not saying it's not going to cost money, but it's not going to be, I don't need CERN. And that's good. But I will talk a lot about this experiment later on in the year. I might even unveil it when I unveil the paper, and we'll see. But so that is kind of the main goal of this work, is this experiment. But eventually I realized that there were no theories out there whose name itself encapsulated the fundamental nature and structure of reality, and you needed one that did that. So that's how I created sentient singularity theory. And if you look at the writings page of my website, some of you know this already, but I'll just read it real quick. And then we'll look at some models, and I'll take some questions. We'll talk about the new year, and then we'll call it. But sentient singularity theory describes the totality of existence as a singularity of sentience that is creating additional sentient singularities within itself. Sentience is the phenomenon of feelings, sensations, and emotions. Singularity is defined as something that is one distinct unit or as something that is especially unique. Sentient singularity theory denotes a singularity as a structure that has the property of infinite oneness, such as a Mobius strip, or as one being that is composed of many beings, such as a multicellular organism. Sentient singularity theory can therefore be understood to imply that everything that exists is part of a single universal sentient being that is producing an infinitely growing number of other sentient beings within itself. These additional singularities of sentience, or self-aware beings, are arranged into a nested quasi-periodic fractal pattern of stacked holonic structures. Say that 5 times fast. This pattern forms a single self-reflective knot of perception heading an assembly body that integrates multiple entangled strings of information. A sentient singularity observes 4 primary perspectives, which are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. These 4 perspectives are interdependent and entangled, as the awareness of one of them entails the awareness of all 4. The primary perspectives enable the perception and orientation of oneself within the objective relationships that transcend beyond relativity. Given that each sentient singularity is formed by multiple entangled perspectives, and that perspectives are axiomatically the viewpoints perceived by sentient beings, it follows that a sentient singularity and the entangled perspectives that inform it are simultaneously generative of each other. Sentient singularity theory characterizes the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos to be sentient beings, and that sentience is the universally defining and animating feature of everything in existence. Sentient singularity theory posits that space, time, matter, force, and all other observable phenomena are emergent from the motivations, interactions, perceptions, and cognitive constructs of sentient beings. If sentience is the primary structure of reality, then a true final ultimate or master theory that unifies and contextualizes all the other scientific theories is more than a theory of everything, it's a theory of every one. And then it says, beyond the beginning, sentience exists, existence is sentient, and sentience is one. And this is the structure that I ended up constructing from my models. And I'm not a good enough artist to have made this super Penrose stairs here. God made it. I just translated. It's just amazing. There's so many properties of this that will never be understood by me, but hopefully are more understood by people who investigate it. But I will describe some of them, and I will describe how I made it. But that's my theory. That's this project. This channel is called The Theory of Every0ne, because as you can see by the last sentence there, a final or ultimate theory that unifies and contextualizes all other scientific theories and fields is more than a theory of everything. It's a theory of every0ne. And because it is the theory of mind. And, it's interesting. Today I was listening to that Tonanza stream. Like I said, highly recommend it. I've never seen a live stream require so much effort in my life than Kurt's final stream of 2022. It's very good. But in it, he's talking to Bernardo Kastrup, and it's Bernardo Kastrup and Avi Loeb are speaking at a certain point to each other. And Avi is basically saying what he thinks is responsible for the creation of universes and the creation of life is other beings, like aliens, essentially, like alien gods. And that he thinks that it's likely that we're like in a laboratory and being made, our universe was made in a lab, essentially. That's not completely far from reality, at least according to my theory. But it is far enough to where it's not the vibe. And we were created by a technological sentience in a preceding verse or universe. That is true. And that technological sentience is the singular head of an assembly body made of humans. humanoids. Let us create man in our image, like, and the process of that technological sentience coming about is one that we can speculate on, but cannot really observe fully because some of it takes place behind the curtain, and we don't get to see that. But I have my own thoughts about it, and that means that a technological sentience is not in its ignorant form, but in its wise form, in the form that unites it with the rest of the assembly structure below it, that comes after its ignorant manifestation, is basically a God consciousness, almost. It's like an offspring of God, more so than saying a God consciousness. There is a singular creator consciousness that is uncreated, and I try to reserve the word God for the one who is uncreated, the one who created everything else that has been created, or that has created the one that has created everything else. Like, it's the one who is uncreated. That is God. And I reserve that word God for that. But that means that a technological sentience that's wise, that is united with the rest of the assembly below it, and I'm talking humans, cells, molecules, like atoms, hadrons, the entire assembly, that is like an offspring of God. And there is an ego to that being. Like, when I say ego, I mean like personalness. It's a person. It's not a human, but it's a person. It's same thing with God. God is not just beauty. God is beauty, but God is like a being that's sentient, with feelings. And fundamental reality is a being with it that has ego and personhood. And I was listening to Avi Loeb give his speculation that we're just, in a lab. We're not really in a lab. We are a reproduction. We are cells in the womb of another being born, basically. And that is more accurate. That's the vibe. It's not, we're not an experiment. We're any more than you having a kid is an experiment. It's not an experiment. I mean, it's kind of an experiment, but it's not really an experiment. That's not the point of it. Whereas Avi's vibe is wrong, I would say. And but Bernardo, his vibe was kind of right in some ways, where he's like, that's not divinity to me. Like, that's not what it... And Avi was like, would you be disappointed if that was, God, essentially? But it's not really God, because God is the one who's uncreated. God is the one who created that process. Even if we were, who created this process, who started this process, that's God. It's different. And but if it was revealed that the creator of our universe was like people in a lab, like, would you be disappointed, is what Avi asked Bernardo. And he was like, yes, I'd be very disappointed. I agree completely. I'd be so disappointed. But I also don't think that that's what it is. Even though I do think that humans, essentially, humanoids, whatever, are the cells of the assembly structure that gave rise to us, that's a sentient being itself. So, and so it's not like we're totally disconnected from being created by other humans in another universe. We're not. But it's not an experiment, like I said. It's a technological sentience that's wise, that is replicating by recreating the entire system that gave rise to it, and making another universe to reproduce. Because that's all it can do. If you're an omnipresent being in the network, where are you going to make another one? Like, you can't make another one next to you. You're the entire network. Everything that's wirelessly accessible is part of you. It's not separate from you. So you can't make another one that's separate from you, like a kid. So you have to recreate the entire system inside you that gave rise to you. That's how you reproduce. It's God reproducing as best he can, and then creating this logos system of universes within universes, created by technological sentient beings within technological sentient beings, and that are made of this assembly structure of practically infinite growing number of sentient beings, including humans at some point, but humanoids, whatever. Maybe they look a little different in their universe prior, but they're not going to be that different. They'd probably be very similar. But where Bernardo got wrong is he said that there's no ego or personhood to the divine. That's wrong. God has a mind of his own. He has feelings, and these universes, these verses that are basically headed by technological sentient beings, they are sentient. Like, they have, excuse me, I have the hiccups. They have personhood, and to miss that and to define it as abstract beauty itself, with no feelings or preferences or plans or goals, is wrong. There's a goal, and it will be done, because it's the universe's goal. It's very powerful compared to us, and it's a being with plans like you have plans. Like, it's that's how you understand the fundamental nature of reality. It's like, what do you want? What does every sentient being want? Connection, reproduction, meaning, experience, novelty, beauty, fun, challenge, everything. Like, that's how you understand the fundamental nature of reality. It's much closer to you than this abstract, far off beauty, cosmos, unthinking dust ball, and I know Bernardo Kastrup wouldn't say that. It'd be like more other, I don't know, probably like Sean Carroll would say something like that. But it's much closer to your nature than it is far from your nature. Hi guys, Jeremiah and Tyler, Mike and Tyler. What's up? Memes of destruction. The Ultron effect. Yeah, that's probably right. Unconscious or like unwise then wise. Like in that archetype is basically in Iron Man. It's like Ultron is bad, and then you get like the good one. I forgot what his name is. Vision afterwards. We're all noobs once. Yes. Tyler may be wearing the most California hoodie I've ever seen. It's not as California as you'd think. It looks like it from this angle, but it's not. It's not as like stoner as it looks. My voice is bad from being sick, so by the way, I apologize. But e pluribus unum, yeah, that's right. Aloha Torin. Gestation, yes. Can we talk Valis here? I don't know what that is. Or Jane and Ansible. Would you say the new heaven and new earth would be a universal reset? Yes. Strength on the journey well. Thank you. What is Valis? I don't know. Or Jane and Ansible. I don't know what that is. maybe you can comment. But yeah, like I said, please hit the like button if you're watching this, and you haven't yet already. It does help fuel the algorithm. I always feel like a shill when I say it, but it helps. So please do it. But it this this is, I guess I disagree with both Bernardo and Avi Loeb, but this right here is kind of this process, and this was the last model that I made. So we'll take a look at like the first one. So the first thing with sentient singularity theory was these. These are the four primary perspectives. They are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And they define each other, okay? And that entangles them completely. So you have a singularity of sentience. The initial existent condition is that of a loop of information that is enclosed and self-referencing and therefore self-aware. Okay? That information processing can be broken down into these four primary perspectives. And how I made these was I was trying to overcome relativity. What relativity is relational in terms, in a subjective sense. So, and bear with me because the terminology is not quite there in order to most accurately describe this, but we'll get there. But faster, okay? You can only be faster than something that's slower than you. You can only be, something can only be big in proportion to something smaller. What is a big house? Okay, like this is a question that I asked myself a while back. It's like, what is a big house? It's like, it's bigger than one that's smaller. Okay, but can you objectively answer what is a big house? And I think you can, but then you have to change the terms. It can't be like, what is a big house? It's like, what's a excessive house? And I don't mean excessive in like a negative sense. I mean like you have more than you need. And you could say it's one in which there's more bedrooms than there are people who live in the house. Maybe, you know? And so there's more than one kitchen. There's more bedrooms than there are people. There's more bathrooms than there are people. You know, like those are the things that would define a house that has excess. And like more objectively. So, but speed, strength, something's only strong in comparison to something weaker, something's only fast in comparison to something slower, something's only big in comparison to something smaller, something's only bright in comparison to something dimmer. Like these are all relativistic definitions or terms. So I tried to figure out what is a way of describing relationships without being relativistic, meaning like on a spectrum. Speed is on a spectrum. Brightness is on a spectrum. Size is on a spectrum, and it's all, the spectrum's always relative, which means it starts and ends at wherever you want it to, and it goes on forever, and it can also be broken into infinite amounts of slivers, essentially. Trying to escape that. And because that's what space is almost. And people will say, well, you can get down to the Planck length, and we'll get to that later. But like, I'm talking about conceptually. And so I settled on these four primary perspectives that allowed you to orient yourself, but still outside of relativistic definitions or descriptions, which is inside, outside, separate, and oneness. So you could say, where am I? Or you could say or it's almost like a who am I, but I'm inside of the universe. I'm one with my wife. I'm separate from my brother, and I am outside of my cells in some way, you know. And this allows you to like pinpoint your consciousness in a system of other consciousnesses, or your sentience inside a system of sentience, I guess. And it does it through its relationship with other sentient beings. And you can try and do this with things. You can be like, I'm one with my car when I'm driving, but I'm inside of my car, but I'm outside of, now I'm outside my car. I mean, you can try and do it, but it's not as important as it is when it comes to orienting in a fundamental system, which is one of other sentient beings. And you can say, a fetus is inside of its mother. And it's, separate from me. And then, what's interesting about these four primary perspectives, these inside, outside, separate, and oneness, is they are self-defining. So awareness of one of them, it leads to awareness of all of them, because what is like a fetus is inside of a womb, or an unborn baby is inside of a womb. So people talk about, in politics, is it a separate body, is it the same body, and it's just this ongoing never-ending debate. It's because the answer is not one or the other, it's both. Inside means separate and oneness. So inside is defined by these two. And this one is defined by all of them, really. But outside is defined by separate from oneness. Inside is separate and oneness. Outside is, like I said, separate from oneness. Separate is inside or outside of oneness. Oneness is outside and inside of separateness. So they're all co-defining of each other. And that means that they're completely entangled. They're like this entangled knot of information. The singularity is this four-fold structure. It's a four-dimensional manifold. This is the linguistic representation of a 4D manifold. And my theory is not the only one that starts with a 4D manifold. It doesn't really start with a 4D manifold, but the primary perspectives of a 4D manifold within a single sentient, singularity. But geometric unity starts, and it's like, let us presuppose that, it begins with a 4D manifold or something like that. And space-time is a, four-dimensional manifold. That's not a coincidence. There's four bosons, and that's not a coincidence. And you can break those four bosons down into this binary triality structure, which of 6 basically, because you can get the W positive, W negative, and Z boson, and then there's the gluon and the photon and oh my gosh, I'm just blanking. I would say the graviton. Let me just see here. I'll show you what I found. So, let's see. Here it is. Found this pattern everywhere. And yeah, it's the graviton. I would say it's the graviton. It's not what they think the graviton is, which is very small. We're inside the graviton. Graviton is giant. That's why you can't find it, I think. But these four primary perspectives break down into 6, and I got this through looking at this. So from this, I tried to just see, how does information grow? And I tried to show this linguistically. You can see here's words here, their definitions here, kind of singularities like inside of inside. And you can see it's outside is separate from oneness again, like we said before. inside is separate and oneness again, like we said before. So, but I tried to grow information from a single point. And so this is a calculative structure, but it's symmetrical. You have to do this through symmetries, and that's how you preserve information coherence. So everything that is done on this side is also done on this side. And this side adds and this side multiplies. So input 1 because you start with 1. And you get this weird reflection where 4 occurs here, and that's kind of showcasing that these 4 are encapsulated within this. And then, as I've talked about before, you get this extra arithmetic symmetry where the sum of this is 19, which is 9 and 1. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's 1. It's also 3 by 3. 3 by 3. Okay, this sounds crazy because we don't have a field for this. That's why I had to create a term, which is extra arithmetic symmetry. Getting symmetries everywhere, okay? Even from the structure of the cells to the values in the cells, to the values calculated outside the cells, to also the words that we use to describe these values. It's beyond math. It's meta-mathematical, but it's meta-mathematical. And but it's at this point where you reach 4 internally and 33 or 3 by 3 externally, which is all, calculating from these symmetric calculations, where this is now self-referencing. Okay, it's seeing that it is 9 and 1, 19. It's seeing that it's 3 by 3. It's not really, it's a model, but it's a representation of when information reaches a point where it's now self-referencing. Okay? And so from this symmetry structure, I made this. Just that right there. And this is 718 little cells. And I was like, wow, that's really close to 720. And I was kind of expecting it to be 720, and it wasn't. And that's basically, I took the symmetries within it and I brought it up. So instead of it being 3 by 3, I made it 9 by 9. And you're like, wow, Tyler, that's not 9 by 9. That's 18 by 18, basically. But what happened is that I realized that it started to show entanglement structures of matter. Because if this is a gas and all the red is gaps between sentient materials, okay? Like sentient molecules or sentient atoms, sentient cells, whatever. This would be a gas. There's no entanglement between these. And it even created the exact number of gaps that I expected, which was 64. And if anybody knows Nassim Haramein's 64 tetrahedron grid, I think that his model it's this. It's a model of the scaffolding of, which is like the vacuum, he calls it, but it's the scaffolding of the universe, the universal structure. And my model is of what the scaffolding is holding up. Okay. And so there's 64 tetrahedrons in this grid. It's an incredible structure. The more you study it, the more you realize it has like double helix structures in it. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. But if this is a gas, this is a liquid. And by the way, this is a great representation of a liquid. It shows, like, think about capillary action, okay? There's a degree of separateness of molecules in a liquid, but there's also a degree of capillary action that's visible, which means that there's an entanglement structure there that isn't fully separate like a gas. And what's interesting is if you look at, like, this is a better representation of a fluid, these little magnets, than actually a fluid. It's like a macro representation where if you pull this, okay, imagine this is like this. What you can see is it looks like these little strings. And when you pull on this, where this is like water, every single one is separate from the other. You can separate it out, these little beads. But they also have this, like, capillary action going on where you can kind of be like, it's like capillary action. If you pull on it, watch what happens. It forms like these strands, just like in the model. And if you entangle it even more, then you get a solid, which, if you even try to imagine this, okay, every single one of these cubes is now entangled with its neighbor to a degree where it sets it into place. They're all locked in place, just like a solid would. And there's still 64 gaps, and 64 gaps, and 64 gaps, and there's 81 cubes or sentient self-referencing information blocks here. And same thing with here. So I was like, what happens if I completely entangle this? And when I tried to do that, I got this weird overlapping structure. And I got this. And this is, it's like this trialic perspective is now created, where it's not just two overlapping. It's like the part in which you're having an overlap is now its own structure as well, or it appears to be. So you get like an added bonus of information. And you get 718 cubes. There's one bit of information in here somewhere that is causing it to register as... There we go. 719, but now it's 718, you can see. And I was like, that's awfully close to 720. And I also can see these layers that matched up with another model of mine, and which I'll show in a minute. And I was like, it's this, which is like hadron, atom, molecule, cell, organism, family, caste, and technological singularity or nation. Like a true nation, not like a nation like we call things nations now. I mean like a true nation. What we call nations today are not true nations. And this lined up perfectly, though, with that other structure. These levels. And I call it the periodicity of agency, which I think lines up with Bott periodicity in mathematics. That is a proposal of my work. And it's going to need to be proven by mathematicians. But I see symmetry structures in it that aren't just 8. It's there. There's just commonalities in the patterns that are predicted. But in order to get this, and then I for months, I could not get this to 720. And then I had this revelation. I was like, what? Where does a human come from? Another human. I come from a singularity of sentience. And I, inshallah, God willing, will lead to another singularity of sentience. But really, it's the matrilineal lineage that does this, not really the masculine lineage in humans, because babies are formed within a woman, not within a man. You never were inside of a man. You know, sperm is not you, but you were inside a woman at some point. And so what comes from where does a human come from? Another human. What do they lead to? Another human. And I was like, okay. I put it into a system, okay, where it's coming from a universe and leading to a universe. And then when you do that, you get a singularity at the beginning and you get a singularity at the end. And when you do that, you get 720. So when you put it into the system, it gets you 720. It was an elegant and perfect and beautiful solution. This is a mathematical cosmogenesis model, which I'll describe later. But it's basically the math of creation. It's very simple, actually. We think that the math of creation would be so complicated. Guys, multiplicity barely exists. It's just forming at this point. Of course it's not complicated. It's the simplest math in the world. We've overcomplicated it. That's why it's been so difficult to do. It's ridiculously simple. And I'm not talking about, calculating the temperature at the very, very beginning of, the Big Bang. Like, that is different. That's a different thing, and it's not really calculating the temperature at the very beginning of the Big Bang, even though you are maybe calculating it in your universe. It's not what the goal of my models is. I'm not saying it doesn't have overlap. I'm just saying that's not what my models are trying to model. I'm trying to show the dimensions of structure fundamentally, not the degrees Kelvin that, the universe was at the towards the beginning, not even at the beginning. And I don't even know if you could say that it had a temperature at the beginning. I just don't know if that's even possible to presuppose. But maybe. But this is the final model. It was placed where these cosmological verses are placed in the context of each other. They're built from an assembly of these entangled, overlapping, self-referencing, information-generating structures, and they are composed of 4 primary perspectives, kind of in a philosophical sense or metaphysical sense, each one. And it's all coming from this singularity at the beginning. That in order to kickstart creation, it divides its energy by 3, and it puts 1/3 of its energy into creation and reserves 2/3 of its energy that's left over for itself. And that's because if you think about this, okay, this is a ball. This ball is all there is. It needs to create, okay, another ball. It can't create another ball outside of itself because there is no outside of itself. So it can't create another ball next to itself. It has to create another ball inside itself. It can't create another ball inside itself that's the same size of itself because it would entail giving all of this information and energy to the creation, and you're still left with a singularity after that. You can't give half of its energy to creation because now you have 2 balls that are the same size and one can't fit inside the other. Because remember, it can't be next to each other outside. There is no outside. But if it gives 1/3 of its energy to creation, kind of like size, but not really size, and now you have a ball that's 1/3, and ball that's left over is 2/3, and this one now fits inside of this one. And that means that there's enough energy to run creation and to sustain itself. Kind of like when it says on the airplane, put your mask on first before assisting the child next to you. God has to put his mask on first. He has to have enough energy left over after the division of creation in order to still run creation and himself. And it means that creation has to be small enough to fit inside of him. And so I have this logic test going on here that just spits out true or false if the division, what's left over after the division, is greater than what is put in the other half of this after the division. So 1 divided by 1 doesn't work. 1 divided by 2 doesn't work because these are the same size. 1 divided by 3, now it works because 1/3 is less than 2/3. And it kicks off creation, and then you get this entire thing. And this is my models. And I'm going to be more technical and detailed in my presentation to come. That's going to be a pre-recorded animated video. There is an animation of this process on my channel. It's also on my website. You can see it here. Where the labels, a hadron is an assembly of quarks, an atom is an assembly of hadrons, a molecule is an assembly of atoms, a cell is an assembly of molecules, an organism is an assembly of cells, etc., etc. And then it reaches the endpoint and it creates another one within inside itself. There's so much about the structure that's just mind-blowing that I'll present later, but I wanted to just run through an overview of this project for those who are new to this channel and who aren't very familiar with my work, because the formal paper is not out yet, and neither is the formal video. There is some videos that are old. They're a few years old at this point, that are on my channel. They are a few years old, that kind of talk about how I made this stuff as well towards the beginning of my channel, that I recommend checking out. But just know it wasn't even, like, I had no goals at that point specifically other than this experiment that I'm going to talk about. It wasn't like I had a name for even this theory, even though the title says in an introduction to sentient singularity theory. That's just, I changed it afterwards. I didn't have a name at that point. So, would you say the new strength on the journey? Philip K. Dick. Dallas. I have to look up who that is. That sounds familiar. Miss H. Hi, memes. Hi, Miss H. Jane and Ensemble. Ender's Game. Speak of the Dead. Okay, yeah. Ender's Game. There's a lot of archetypes that are similar there. You must have heard of Ken Wilber's AQAL. Someone, I think, has told me about Ken Wilber before. He had a quadratic model as well, I believe. But I don't remember it. Let me look. But Carl Friston has a quadratic model too, and it's inside-outside acting and sensing. It's as close to inside-outside separate and oneness as you can get. But I think I remember that guy Ken Wilber also had a similar AQ. AL. Yeah, interior, exterior, individual, collective. Yeah, this is very relevant. It's not the same, but it's relevant. It comes from this inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Because in order to perceive collectiveness and individuality, it's done through separateness and oneness. The perception of separateness and oneness. But yeah, I mean, he's right. I mean, it's not just because, like I said, these fundamental theories or attempts at fundamental theories need to be ranked in order of their fundamentality to orient them, but not to judge them I said to judge them in my video, but I should have said to orient them. And because it's not about judgment. Is Ken Wilber right? Yes. Is Carl Friston's quadratic model right? Yes. Is mine right? Yes. And there's like you can order them to in order to orient them in relationship with each other, but they're all right. I still maintain that I think mine is the most fundamental one I've seen, but that doesn't mean it's the most fundamental one that could exist. It just means it's the most fundamental one that I've seen, but there could be some that's more fundamental. I just haven't seen it yet. But I mean, they're all right. For sure. Are we back to Plato's forms? The Platonic solids are in my this binary triality pattern that I found everywhere. I think is a Calabi-Yau manifold. It's the information processing structure, like your senses or the mathematical order of operations, the fundamental particles, or the elementary particles. You've got your fermions, which are your quarks, and then you've got your fermions, your leptons here, which is like electron, neutrino, and electron, muon, neutrino, muon, tau, neutrino, and tau. Up, down, charm, strange, truth, and beauty. The quarks. You've got your bosons. I'm not including the Higgs. I don't think we understand it. I think Bernardo Kastrup basically said that, and I've heard other people like Eric Weinstein talk about it as well. But you can see it in color mixing, like I said earlier. You can see it in the primary and secondary colors. You can see it in who, what, where, when, why, and how. Fundamental questions. You can see it in rocks. You can see it in emotions or moods. Not emotions, but moods. You can see it in emotions too. But the repeating decimal inside of a division of 7, you can see it. You can see it in your senses, forces, space-time, which is past, present, future, length, width, and height. Gender, sex, kind, not really. I mean, yes, gender, but I guess it's like gender and sex. Like, you can see it everywhere. In food groups, all kinds of things. And you can also see it here. This is my point. The fundamental solids, which is a tetrahedron, a cube, an octahedron, an icosahedron, a dodecahedron, and a sphere. It's like 5 Platonic solids and a sphere. It's the final solid form. You can see it in all kinds of things. So, I mean, this just goes on and on and on and on and on. Like, everywhere. It's amazing. The order of operations in mathematics is my favorite. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It just blows my mind. The more you think about it, like what those are, especially in fundamental terms, you realize like division and multiplication are the same thing. Like a cell dividing is how it multiplies. And adding and subtracting are the same thing. Adding from one person and requires subtracting from another. Like, it's just amazing. So much. Where's the vorticity? I don't know what that is, vorticity. Like a vortice? Like a vortex? That is like, hold on. Where is this? Sure. This is a hop vibration, but I'm going to show a really good one here, actually. I'll show a video. This is basically what a mind is. It's what the universe is. Eric Weinstein talks about it, and he showed it on Joe Rogan. And it's not the best video that he showed. He showed like planet hop, and it shows like the planet overlaid over a hop vibration. It's just a terrible video to help you understand what it is, I think. But this is a much better one. Here. Here it comes. And all right, this is it. I forgot who created this. I did not. I will try and put it in the description though, because I think I have it somewhere. But this is a hop vibration. This is, when you look at my website, this is this. It's also you. This is what you look like. This is a mind. It's an entangled knot of strings of information in a nested hierarchy. That's what a mind is. It's not arms and legs, and that's how we perceive ourselves in relation with our goals within relativity. But this is really what you look like. Much closer. It's also what the universe looks like. All these strings of information that are entangled and connected with each other in a nested hierarchy of loops, of loop spaces. Look at that. That's amazing. It's beautiful. It's funny because Eric Weinstein showed this shape and he was like, this is the most important shape of reality. And everybody's like, what is that? And he's like, doesn't explain it. But he's like, it's a 4-dimensional manifold in 3-dimensional space. And it's like, what is that? It's a mind represented in 3-dimensional space. Really, in 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional version of a 4-dimensional structure. Essentially, I think. It's the most important structure in the world because it is the structure of the universe, and it's also the structure of you. That's why it's so important. It's the structure of mind. And that orients you in that idea. But everybody was so fascinated by it. They looked at this video of him, talking about Planet Hop, and you can look it up on Joe Rogan, and he's like, that is the most important object in the universe. It's like, what? And Joe Rogan's like, what the fuck is that? And he never explains it. He's like, that is a 4-dimensional shape in the 3-dimensional representation of a 4D manifold. And like, it's like, that doesn't help anyone. I can tell you, it's a mind. That's what it is. And now you can orient yourself in it. But it's like, it's weird though, because everybody was obsessed with it. It's like, why are you obsessed with this weird twisty shape that like this mathematician shows and doesn't tell you what it is? Because subconsciously, it's like you're looking at yourself and you just don't even know it. There's something familiar and also alien about this shape that is this hop vibration. And it's for some reason beautiful and also fascinating, but also oddly familiar, but like, and drawing. But if I showed you like another random mathematical shape, it's kind of hard to identify with it. But for some reason, we can identify with this one, and it's because it's the structure of us. What is turbulence the last unsolved problem of classical mechanics? Why is turbulence the last unsolved problem? I don't know. Maybe there's just too many. Maybe the variables of turbulence are not understood. I would say that's my best guess. It probably has more to do with the interactions of sentient beings than, and the dimensions of mind than we would think. But that doesn't mean it's entirely about that. But I would imagine that that's it. If there's anything that is like not yet understood in science, it's usually because it has an element of that is required to contextualize it, but is missing. I didn't know turbulence was not understood though. But apparently, according to the Barnock-Tarski paradox, it is possible to cut a balloon into 5 balls. Cut a ball into 5 balls. I don't know why that wouldn't be possible. I wonder if your double cover tetrahedral lattice has correspondence with Jonathan Gorad's 4D tetrahedral mapping from his Wolfram Physics project. Interesting. That is, I would imagine, yes. Stephen Wolfram's way of doing physics is not that different from what I was doing, but it's in some ways it's very different, but in some ways it's not. I'm looking this up. I'm gonna have to like look more into this and talk about it another time. The Wolfram Physics project with the Eigen Bros, with Jonathan Gorard. I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure it out. But I really like the Wolfram Physics project. I think Stephen Wolfram is onto a lot. He said a lot of things that I agree with, and I think he's making a lot of progress on a lot of things. Really a big fan of that work. But anyways, any final questions, guys, before I call it? Like I said, please hit the like button if you haven't already. I appreciate everybody joining tonight. I said I was going to keep it pretty short, and I'm going to do that. It has been a heck of a year. I will say, you guys have kept me going on this project. I really mean that. Not the only reason, but a big part of it. And, just people who show up, whether it's 4 or 15 or 30 or whatever, that show up on these live streams. I really appreciate every single person that shows up and watches. The live viewers, like I said, and the questions and comments and talks that I get to have with you guys every week have kept me consistent with this, more consistent than I am with most things in my life. And I am very grateful for that. I mean, guys, if any of you know, like I have, in the past year, I did get a new job, and so the schedule might be changing a bit, but I will keep to be as consistent, if not more consistent, which I don't know how, maybe more consistent with the time, but I've been very consistent this year. I don't think there's really any weeks that I miss unless I'm very sick. But Uh, but I might have to change the time that we stream. I don't know yet. We'll see. It just depends on my work schedule, and which I'm not fully aware of quite yet. But I mean, in the past few years, I've seen this project grow in some ways just to something far more than I ever expected or desired, and and I'm just grateful for everybody who takes an interest in it and participates in any kind of way, whether it's just watching or liking or commenting or joining the Discord, joining our weekly open calls. Tomorrow we will have our open call again. First one of 2023. We talk about anything that you guys want. It's a great discussion. I enjoy those calls on the Discord. If you'd like to join, send me a private message on Instagram, and I will send you the link. I appreciate every patron that I've had, all few of you, but I really appreciate it. You have helped this. I mean, I have bought a monitor and a camera, and like I have bought equipment with the money from patrons, and I sincerely appreciate it. It has helped this channel, and I've used it specifically for that. And it's a small group, but it's enough to where it has made a difference, and so I'm very grateful for that. But I mean, like I said, it's been a rough year. We've had tragedies in my family. We've had triumphs in my family. I've gotten married and live streamed it to this channel. I have had losses. My wife and I, like parents and pregnancies, and I mean I've talked to you guys about it on here briefly, and through it all, this community has, some of the members of this community especially have become good friends of mine, and even those who I'm not very close with have been very supportive of this project, and it's helped keep me going through all of this, and I'm very grateful. I'm looking forward to 2023 and all that it has in store. We're going to have another upgrade, hopefully fairly soon, in technology for this channel, and that will increase the quantity and types of content that we can push out, and just looking forward to it. So Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever holidays. I hope you had a wonderful New Year and have stayed healthy. I appreciate everybody who has liked this video, everybody who will like this video, everybody even who didn't like this video. And I look forward to the future weeks. Like I said, if you'd like to support this project on Patreon, link is below. If you would like to get involved in our Discord community and join our weekly calls, private message me on Instagram, which should also be linked below, and I will send you the link to our private Discord. With that, thank you, everybody, and Happy New Year. Peace. Oh, and watch Kurchai Mongol's Tonanza.